Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be attempting to quilt my first quilt. You may have seen over on Instagram that I finished my first quilt top. It's a patchwork of like 3.5 inch squares. They're all linen scraps from garments that I've made. And so today I'm going to start actually quilting the quilt. If you're new here, my name's Rebecca and I love to talk about all things sewing, knitting, slow fashion. So if you're new here and those are also interests of yours, please do consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons below. Today I'm going to attempt to assemble my quilt. I have the quilt top completed. I've got my batting and my backing fabric, and I'm gonna spread everything out on the floor and try to line things up. I'm going to try to put this thing together and then carry it back downstairs to my sewing machine and attempt to begin the quilting process. Someone mentioned that there's a spray that you can use. So you would lay down your backing fabric and then spray it, and then do your batting and then spray it and then do your top, and that would keep everything from shifting. And if I had read that before today, I would definitely go out and get some fabric safe spray adhesive. I didn't know that was an option, but I have safety pins, so that's what I'm going to use. And yeah, hopefully it works. Hopefully it works okay. I'm gonna try taking it slow and yeah, start quilting my first quilt. I got this navy blue cotton fabric from Joann. It's one of their extra wide quilting cottons made specifically for backing quilts. I got 2 yards and it's more than enough. The batting I purchased on Amazon. I got a 72 by 96 inch cotton quilt batting. It was about $24, so pretty affordable. And the final measurement of my quilt is about 65 by 68 inches, so a little bit smaller, but it's good to have more than enough. I actually read somewhere that when you're quilting, you should leave 3 to 4 inches around all sides of excess batting and backing fabric, as things shift around while you're sewing, and you can easily cut the excess off at the end of the quilting process before binding the edges. So that's what I did. As I mentioned before, I chose to attach the 3 layers together with safety pins, and I decided to do that upstairs on my living room rug to have a little bit more of a cushion underneath my knees, which I think was a good idea, but it did make it quite difficult as the pins kind of got caught in the pile of the rug. So if you're doing this, I suggest doing it on a harder floor surface. It would probably be a lot easier. Also, each of these little squares is made from a linen or linen blend scrap from a garment project that I have made in the past. So all of the fabrics were pre-washed, and I found them to be a little bit shiftier than I imagine a quilting cotton would be that wasn't pre-washed. So I think typically with quilts, you're not supposed to pre-wash the quilting cotton until you've kind of assembled the whole thing. But I am really pleased that I was able to use up all of these fabrics from my stash. I decided to use a slightly off-white thread for the top of the quilt, and then I'm putting a navy blue thread in the bobbin so that the thread on the back of the quilt, the navy side, will blend in pretty well, and then on the front, I would say the predominant color is kind of a light tan off-white, sort of that neutral linen color. I'm also going to be using my walking foot. This came with my sewing machine, and this is the first time I'm using it. Basically, the idea is that those little teeth that you saw on the foot are going to help pull the fabric through. Your sewing machine has feed dogs on the bottom underneath the presser foot that typically feed the fabric through the machine. But with the backing fabric and the batting, there's a lot that needs to go through it, and so those feet on the walking foot help to get the top, middle, and bottom layers kind of all fed through at the same rate
so that there's not bunching. That's the idea. This was the first time I used it. Like I said, I was really pleased with how it worked, and I think that I did have 1 or 2 areas where I got a little bit of a pucker on the backing fabric, but for such a large quilt, I think the walking foot really did a great job. So I'm showing you here, just with 2 layers of fabric with batting in between, how the walking foot helps to feed both those top and bottom layers at the same rate through the machine. And I think it's doing a really wonderful job. I also think this walking foot would be really useful to use on like kind of slippery fabrics or knit fabrics, and I'm looking forward to using it more on other projects in the future as well. So I'm really glad that I tried a new tool for this project. Something else that I learned while attempting my first quilting project is that there's a huge amount of fabric and it's going to want to pull the quilt down. So if you have a really big table, I would recommend utilizing that. I ended up kind of having to hold the excess of the fabric so that it didn't pull on what I was trying to stitch, if that makes sense. And it was actually kind of straining on my left hand to hold and feed the bulk of the quilt through the fabric. So I ended up using, here you can see this is like a cleaning glove, but it has a textured grip to it. And this made it so much easier to feed the fabric through the machine. I know that you can buy quilting gloves that basically do the same thing. It gives a little bit of friction and it helps you to handle the bulk of the fabric. And honestly, this made it twice as fast. I was able to really get moving through the quilting process after I used this glove. So here you can see I have completely quilted the material here. I decided to start kind of in the middle of the quilt and do a diagonal line across the squares, and then I worked out towards each of the opposite corners, and this made it easier for me to handle how much fabric I had to roll up to fit it through my machine, since I don't have a long arm quilting machine, and that worked really well for me. So here I'm just trimming off the excess of the backing and the batting, and then I'm going to apply my binding pieces. So I did buy pre-made bias binding in a navy color that matched my backing fabric. I know one of you told me in the comments of another video that that was not necessary because you're only binding straight edges, so you don't need it to be cut on the bias, and you could use excess backing fabric and just cut long rectangular strips. So there's a tip for you if you're trying to save a little bit. You can definitely do it yourself. Here's the end result. I'm really, really pleased with it. I am surprised by how easy it was once I got going. I was a little bit intimidated at the start. It was a little bit slow going, but once I got in the swing of it, it was really meditative and nice, and I just listened to music, and I was able to create a quilt entirely with my own 2 hands, which is really cool. I'm really proud of it, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all doing really well, and I will see you soon in the next one.